going back to where we started 2 years ago, so we're 2 years in, and we set out a 5-year strategy. We're 2 years into the strategy, and we've come a long way. I believe where the business is now is right at that point where we've cleaned up our existing operations, we've done the technical engineering work to now go into our transformative growth phase. So both in terms of mergers and acquisitions and exploration in our Southwest Peninsula. So I'm really happy where we are now. You can see new country entry in our roadmap already. I was hoping to announce it today, where and how we're going to be entering in a new country, but we're in detailed PSC negotiations. It's imminent, it's within the next month or two that we're going to be signing that PSC, and then we're going to be informing you about what our plans are in that region. So we're very, very close. The two key elements to this presentation is one is profitable battles. So what do we do with our base business, and how do we best manage our base business, which pays our bills, which reduces our age payables, and gives us the investment opportunities within our growth assets, and then our material growth opportunities. So how do we grow this business from, I keep calling it jokingly, red semis, to a real business beyond $500 million. So first, the grind, the profitable battles, and that is all about efficiency. So to run an oil business profitable, you need to be very disciplined on cost. You need to have the people in the right place. You need to have the right processes. You need to have the right relationship with the service communities. In Trinidad, that's not easy to implement. There's a lot of friction to change, but we are there now. With Jeffrey and country, he's got strong relationships with the authorities, and he understands the culture in Trinidad and how to get the best out of the people. So we made big strides, and and very importantly, we are growing our new leaders from within the organization. And Vishan is a good example. He started as a drilling engineer when we just took over from LGO, and now he's our operations manager. So he was a gem within our organization, very capable, honorable, trustworthy guy. I've got a lot of respect for Vishan. So, 4 elements to having profitable battles. We've learned that it's best to own your own. The service sector in Trinidad is low quality and expensive, so we'll talk about that a bit more. Enhanced recovery. If you want to add cheap production to your portfolio, we believe it has to be through being clever about existing reservoirs and not just drilling wells. And we need to be focused on the business environment and how we maneuver and make decisions within the business environment, and maybe even influence the business environment. And I've got a couple of slides on that. Own your own equipment. So when we last spoke, we had our Columbus 1 rig operating, or about to operate, and now recently we've made a decision to buy a second workover rig in the US. After the shale boom in a certain area has come down, we were able to pick up this rig very cheaply, and it's now getting ready to be transported to Trinidad. So that we've got 2 pieces of equipment. An oil company, I believe, historically, should not own their own equipment. So ideally you should rely on a robust service chain to provide you with services you need for running your oil fields. In Trinidad, that balance is out of tinker. There's been a lot of changes within Petrotrin. Petrotrin now Heritage, they're ramping up their activities. Their ambition is to have 23 of those rigs operating on their fields. That means the supply of those workover rigs is very scarce. So they're only operating 12 now. So there's within Trinidad demand for another 10. So, and we were always dangling behind. So if one of our big wells failed, we had difficulties getting access to installation equipment and repairing those wells. And this is our strategy to deal with it. The Columbus rig we expect to be operating within the next month or so, and this we hope is going to be in-country certified, inspected and ready to go in September. So that's going to then further stabilize our base. You then ask, well, why do you need these rigs? Because you've drilled the well, you've got a pump on and it's producing. So why do you need to go back? Oil wells, these type of oil wells are inherently maintenance intensive. There is all sorts of rotating equipment in the system. The Noddy Donkey has got engines and gears and stuff which can wear and tear. And then you've got the whole system going down in your wellbore, and effectively with the rod you are scraping your tubing every time you go up and down. So the pumps downhole fail, and that's normal wear and tear. The tubing is prone to wear and tear. So that's why we need to have this ability to continuously look after our wells and maintain that stable base of production, which gives us a stable income every quarter. So that's just to maintain your equipment. We have got an ambition to grow. So in our enhanced recovery piece, we need to intervene with wells because we want to change the configuration of those wells. We want to change the way we use them from stable producers to possibly injectors, water injectors, or CO2 injectors. So we need access to that equipment, and if we don't have it, you see our production decline. So this is the way we deal with it, and we're in a good place. Going through the other element which is going to maintain a stable production base is enhanced recovery, and that's the Goudron water injection. We started that a year and a half ago, and if you look at where we are presently in the material balance of the field, so over the years, the 50 years, the field has produced 11 and a bit million barrels of oil and water, so combined oil and water. All operators have taken that fluid from the reservoir, resulting in a very low reservoir pressure. If you look at what we've done in the last year and a half, we re-injected 300,000 barrels. So that's only 3% of the volume which has been taken out. So you wouldn't expect big changes with only 3% replacement. So we've been slightly more clever than that. So we've broken up the reservoir in individual segments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. How much water is being injected on the second injector well in comparison to the first injector? Is it on a sort of like for like, or is there a difference as to what's going in?
No, the water we've got available for re-injection is between 500 and 1,000 barrels. So it's because we do per day. So we don't have a water source in the area. So we use our produced water to re-inject and to establish additional pressure elsewhere in the reservoir. Okay. So that's a limiting factor.
Yeah. And the next question, apologies to everybody and yourself if it sounds a bit daft, but I'm not an oil man, so no, unless I ask, I don't know. So my understanding that these areas are traps is what was described to me before.
Yes.
So
yes.
If the oil is of such great API, being that near the surface,
yeah.
It's, as you mentioned before, being fed from potentially an enormous reservoir bigger than Goudron itself, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So if this oil came up from the reservoir below to these traps and it hasn't degraded, that must mean there's a constant sort of link to below. So if you're putting water in, is there a danger that the pressure
just drops down in a big
well,
hole?
it drops, but it's sort of forcing it down the same channel that it came. I know they separate, so obviously the water sits on the top. But what I mean is that why the second injector well's been brought into? So are you losing any pressure anywhere along the line because it's coming from below? So there's a kind of swap going on. So once again, apologies if that sounds daft.
No, it doesn't sound daft at all. It's a fair question, and it is, and that's exactly what we've been tackling. And so effectively, what you're asking is where we're injecting the water injection effective. Aren't we losing it to somewhere
Correct,
else
yeah.
in a bigger system,
Correct, yeah.
and it's just a drop in the ocean?
Because of the high
Yeah,
API
yeah.
at the top.
And that's why we've broken it up in segments, compartments. We believe that the reservoir has been broken up in individual compartments, and we've got solid proof it is. In the first injection trial we've done, that was in 669, and we were hoping that 669 was in pressure communication with our biggest well in the field, 670. 670 was the big well which produced 1,200 barrels a day. So they're physically relatively close. I think they're subsurface elevation within hundreds of meters. But what we found is when we were injecting in 669, that after injecting 31% of the volume produced by 669, the pressure started going up. So then we had positive indication that we were injecting in an isolated lens. And later I'll show you in the slide what I mean with those lenses. So that isolated lens, it's a technical success, not a commercial success. If we would have another producer in that lens, we would have had extra oil production from that lens. But because pressure built up and 669 was the only well in the block, we didn't get any extra production. But it did show us that if we can find a pair, injector producer pair, which are in communication, then we will get the incremental oil production. So now this is very important for the sea sands, because the sea sands are individual lenses and broken up by faults. So these individual pieces of reservoir, we now need to be looking for which wells are in communication. So that's continuous ongoing trials and injection trials and tests to see which pair is in communication. And once we found a communicating pair, which we haven't, through the oil zone we haven't, then we can really start getting some benefit from water injection. I said in the oil zone we haven't. We have found wells connected in a water-bearing layer. So we're getting closer to adding oil production from water injection. And your other question, where this reservoir is fed from a deeper source, I will show you a slide later on in the exploration piece where that's clear from a picture. So this discussion is very relevant on sea sand. The Mayaro sand is a different sand. So in Goudron you've got two sand packages, two main sands. You've got the sea sand packages and you've got the Mayaro. Mayaro is significantly shallower, lower pressure, but also more continuous. And we've learned a great deal around the Mayaro. And that's this picture. This is very hot off the press. This came from the engineering team just yesterday, the day before yesterday. So Goudron is a very special field. It is right in the middle of a jungle, very different road access, and that's why we don't have seismic interpretation in the Goudron field. So we don't have a clear snapshot of how the field looks like. So from the data we collect, we make a geological picture which trying to understand how this reservoir looks like. Our engineers have been collecting salinity data. So every well produces a bit of water, and that water has got a degree of salt, varying from heavy salty brine to nearly fresh water. And from the data we can see that water is ingressing into the reservoir from the north and from the south. And interestingly, the wells which are on the edge of these very low freshwater type salinities, i.e. very close to meteoric water pushing the oil to the wells, these wells, 275, 2557, they've got very stable long-term production. 275 is our best well. It produces 30 barrels a day already for years, with high water cuts and nearly fresh water coming through. So the reservoir system is connected somewhere to meteoric water. So water is coming into the basin, and that water is then driving oil to the wells surrounding that area. So this picture was built up purely from salinities. So then if you go to this side of the field, the produced water is very high saline. It is nearly brine. It's heavy, it's thick, and these wells, they start off producing very high after they were drilled, and then they very quickly decline. So these wells suffer from pressure support. So we're now going to be submitting to Heritage a further injection pilot, maybe a full injection campaign. So as the final implementation of water injection in Goudron, where we're going to be targeting water injection in this red zone. And we believe that because the reservoirs are continuous there, that we're going to have a lot of benefit from water injection in the area. We're going to use it to also change have a strong negotiation with Heritage to improve the commercial terms.
With the potential of what is beneath Goudron, as we spoke about before, and you said because it was heavily sort of jungled, that it wouldn't make sense to go there right now, as opposed to it would be better to go to SWP. But in the long term, when it comes to exiting the company, would it be good to monetize that, kind of like selling a property with planning permission, so you get the extra value if you could prove that there's something below of material difference to the company, so material value, so you can command a higher exit price. Say, look, we've got this as well. Is that something worthwhile that you're looking to do long term, do you think, with that?
The company is in a fortunate position where we've got so many opportunities. So we've got Southwest Peninsula drilling, we've got drilling in, we've got CO2 injection in Trinity, and we've got water injection in Goudron. So if you just look at the list of what we can do and where we can get the biggest bang for our investment buck, then that opportunity would be ranking like below middle. So yes, it's there. It is an opportunity, but to drill that well that deep in Goudron would cost us $1.5 million, maybe $2 million. I'd rather spend that money in the Southwest Peninsula, where I've got much better commercial terms.
With the revenue that you could make from Southwest Peninsula or South America, if we're going there, you could then use that to sort of go back to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Goudron has a strict stratigraphic limit on it. It's 5,000 feet as well.
Yeah.
So we can't drill below 5,000 feet.
Because of the rights, or
the rights?
But didn't you say before that shouldn't be a problem, that because you're above it, no one effectively could just
later on I'll show you a picture of the Southwest Peninsula, and you can see why we don't care about that 5,000 limit. But I'll show you later.
Yeah.
Thanks for the questions. Enhanced recovery CO2 injection. This is in partnership with Predator. You may have been following this in the press, that Predator, we really like this partnership. We own the field, we operate the field. Predator is helping us with a lot of technical work around CO2 injection, and more importantly, they're providing the capital to do the CO injection pilot. So for us, it's a free ride, and we share the benefit in incremental oil production. So it's a very good deal for us. The logic of injecting CO2 or water is similar. There are two fundamental differences. Is that one bottle of CO2, liquid CO2, because we'd be transporting and injecting liquid CO2, equates to 500 bottles of gaseous CO2. So the expansion factor is massively different. So the amount of CO2 you need to inject to re-establish pressure in that reservoir is significantly lower. So that's one benefit. And the other benefit is that CO2 under certain pressure conditions becomes miscible with oil, and then reduces the viscosity of the oil. Makes the oil easier to flow through the reservoir system, and as a result enhance your production in general and also the ultimate recovery. So it's got two key benefits. The technology is proven. It's been used in the US for many, many years. And in Trinidad, we've got the fortunate situation that the ammonia plant has got a lot of excess CO2, very, very clean CO2, which can be transported in trucks to our Trinity Inniss field to be injected. So good project, and we've made significant milestones. So this is an overview of the project where we are. It's in the Trinity Inniss field. We are the operators, and Predator are our technical partner and financial partners. The equipment we use is very similar to our water injection equipment in Goudron. It's the same type of injection pump. It's just the fluid end, which is different. And you can see the white bit, that is ice being deposited on the outside of the pump when pumping CO2. This talks about the pilot. So we're taking one particular pair which we know are in communication. 84 is in communication with 85. So we've got a sequence of injecting, first a bit of in 85 and then a bit in 84, and then see how the system responds to the CO2 injected. So that's the logic around the pilot. But very importantly, and that's taken a long time and a lot of preparation time, and that's why things never move as quick as I want to, because there is so much paperwork to be done. But we've got the first very important piece of paper is that we've got the environmental permits. We received them yesterday from the government. So now we can progress with the project, and I expect to be injecting CO2 in September of this year already. And then see what we get, and we'll be reporting back.
Leo, one sec. What characteristics make that field suitable for CO2 compared to other fields in Trinidad?
It is a Herrera reservoir as opposed to a Mayaro and Cruz reservoir in Goudron. And one of the main benefits of Herrera reservoir is that the deep water turbidite sediments. And that means they're more continuous, and it's easier to find wells which are in communication. And then the other thing is that the block we've picked is a very nice distinct fault block within the Trinity Inniss field, which gives a very clear indication of how much volume you need to be injecting to get any benefits. So that's why the Trinity Inniss field is particularly suitable for this technology. And Predator has done a lot of work on this. They've been studying this for more than a year. Just the general field, the production history. So there's a lot of effort gone into this. On the business environment in Trinidad, this is an important slide, boring slide possibly, but it's important. The contractual arrangements we have in country are three types. We've got IPSC, so that's incremental contracts where we operate on the behalf of heritage. So that's in Goudron and Trinity Inniss. We've got a contract with heritage, and then heritage owns the license from the government. So you've got an extra step between us and the ultimate owner of the land. That creates two things. That creates a lot of paperwork, because anything we need to do, we first need to go to heritage, ask for permission, and then heritage needs to go to the government to ask for permission, which makes for a slow process. And if you look at the economic returns, this is the Goudron field. If we would sell a barrel of oil at $60, only $30 would go to Columbus. The rest would go to heritage and to government. And that's through a complex royalty system. So that's the economic environment for Goudron. The same on Trinity Inniss and South Arran. So the same economic balance. If you look at the Southwest Peninsula economics, they're much better. They're more in our favor, and only 10% or $10 of the $60 goes to third parties. So we get nearly $50 for every bottle.
Will they renegotiate at all? Is there any sort of behind the scenes going on that you could get them to budge a little bit more to make it a bit more worthwhile for Goudron as well, so everybody can benefit?
Where did you pick up that information?
Pardon?
Where did you pick up that information?
I'm just asking if Goudron's so bad, can we not push them a little bit harder to give a bit of leeway for that as such?
Yeah. So and that's why I'm showing this slide. because both the Trinity Inniss and Goudron IPSCs are up for renewal. So we are in deep, hard negotiations with Heritage to improve these terms, and it's part of our core strategy to improve the profitability on these fields, and change the work obligations we have. So we're in those negotiations, which we've got. It's hard, but it's amicable. So we've got good links at all levels within the organisation. So I'm convinced we're going to come to an equitable decision for both. And the ultimate objective is to get a new license in place for 10 years without any real obligations and at the best economic commercial terms for us, so that we can continue to operate this.
With that in mind, if it was to improve, could we then go back, even though we had the sand issues, and the reason obviously you pulled back on those, the reworkings of those, because it didn't make economical sense because of what we're getting per barrel. But if they do improve that, then it could potentially be worth, even with the sand issue, to go back and increase production again if they budge a little bit on the price.
Yeah. So the question is with these potentially improved economic terms, would projects we've paused now be economic to go back again?
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we want to renegotiate the terms on this, and that's the argument we're using. There's so much to be done in the Goudron field. There's so much optimization, but under these economic terms, so not only the IPSC terms are harsh, it's also held back by the SPT issue, which we'll talk about later.
Another question later then for that.
So, but that's a very valid point, and yes, that's a fundamental. Yes. So, supplemental petroleum tax? It's petroleum tax, right? Yeah. This was put in place when oil prices were 100 barrels. So government believed that the oil companies was getting too much money from their operations, and probably rightly so. Windfall profits, we call that. So they implemented a tax without really thinking about what structure they put in place. So they put an artificial structure where this SPT tax, the 18% increase in tax, would be implemented at $50 per barrel, and not really thinking that oil would ever go back to as low as where it did. But what they've now created is a zone where at $49.9 per barrel we make nice money, and then at $50 per barrel suddenly our free cash is dropped to, say, $500,000. So then all our investment capabilities have come to a halt because of their windfall profit tax. So everyone agrees that it's a rubbish tax. It's the way it's implemented is rubbish. The fact that it takes so much away from the operators and stopping investment in country is considered as a real problem. So all the operators are aligned. Heritage is aligned because they are subject to the same tax. It is just the World Bank is aligned, so they've done a review on this particular tax and they've advised to implement a different tax, but this is government. This takes a long time to go through the motions, but eventually we'll win.
What is the exact dead zone range? So if it's between 50, what is it?
60.
60 is it? Yeah.
Between 50 and 60.
Okay.
So you see, 50 at 50 we make, or at 49.9 we make the same as at 60. So that's the death zone.
On that point, SPT, I mean, historically, I'd be right in saying that the company actually hasn't suffered too badly because of CapEx.
Correct.
I think I'm right in saying that CapEx can negate the SPT. So if
To
historically you've built up capital expenditure, so that relieves the SPT. Have we got a carry forward CapEx that can be utilised to help mitigate?
It's 20% of the. You can offset 20% of your
It's not all the
CapEx.
SPT you can offset against capital expenditure. So it's only part of your capital expenditure. So that's one thing.
So I'm thinking the new rig would help. Purchase the new rig.
The question is, would that be classified as OPEX versus CapEx? So that's then the debate you're going to have.
You end up in a continual debate about what CapEx is.
Yeah.
We've had that debate, and we have utilised our pool of capex, and now we're more or less in the place where we need to. New capex will help.
But you're
reduce.
correct in saying that, because ThinkCap made a calculation. They believe that if that it's about 15% the oil companies would get better if this tax drops to 10%.
What you'll also see later on is the surface peninsula, including some potentially indicative economics, and SPT doesn't kick in for a while because of your capex program, because you're actually utilising your capex. So in that environment, we are investing here as opposed to here.
Yeah. So any further questions on, because that's the base business. Now, next part of the presentation is about growing a real business, a material business, why we're all shareholders and why I'm shareholder in this business. So, building a real material business is, we believe we can do that through exploration and through mergers and acquisition. We've got in the Southwest Peninsula, where we own the license area now, we've got a large prospect portfolio, 12 prospects we see in the seismic, and of those 12 prospects we've matured 2 drill-ready opportunities, and we'll talk about those later. We're gung-ho on getting everything in place to start drilling September this year. So the teams are full blast on finalizing the G&G work, doing the site preparations, getting the well proposals ready, and we've got a rig lined up, which we'll talk about in a bit later. But so that's now happening. We are moving ahead. We're going ahead with this, and this is where we can add material value to the company. Coming back to the earlier question about the opportunities we have in Columbus, and each of those dots represents one of the opportunities. And now we're chasing the big green one in the Southwest Peninsula drilling. And remember, I think we had this conversation before, if you put these dots, blobs in perspective, in opportunity size, that this green blob would be the size of the whole picture. So in relative scale. So this is big. Merger and acquisitions, we've got one slide on that later. First, some G&G work. So I would like to get everyone on a similar understanding of where we are in the geology. So we talked about that Trinidad is in the Orinoco Basin. So the Orinoco Basin is a massive river in South America. It runs through Colombia, Venezuela, and it takes sand, clay, silt, all deposits from the Andes all the way into the Atlantic Ocean. It dumps it literally on top of Trinidad. So there's clay, rich clay with hydrocarbon potential. There is sand coming from this river. So you've got this massive source of sediment from the South America onto Trinidad.
It's the biggest source in the world, isn't it?
It is the largest system in the world. Yeah. So if you look at where Trinidad is in the sequence of the depositional environment, it is in the deltaic area, the fluvial system. So you've got the rivers coming down, the rivers then flow into the sea in deltas, and then in the Atlantic you've got water and sediment flow into the deep water part of the Atlantic. So that's the environment we're operating in, and throughout that sequence you'll find good reservoir potentials. So earlier on we talked about Herrera reservoirs. Herrera reservoirs are typically deep water turbidites deposits, and they're classified as large continuous fans because that's a large big structure. So we like turbidites. So remember, turbidites are good. And then the shallow marine. So you see all these channels, and over time these channels often fill up with sand, and they become your reservoir, your oil and gas reservoir. So you can imagine that if you drill a well on this island, you would miss the reservoir, and if you would drill just 10 meters or further, you would be in one of those channels. And that's exactly what we're seeing on Goudron. So some of those wells are right in the middle of a channel, which is good producers. But then, if you move 50 meters away, you don't find that same channel sand anymore. So that's the typical geological setting for those type of reservoirs. And then you've got further towards the river, where you've got river deposits. So that whole sequence, you see all those deposits nicely layered under all of Trinidad. So all the Trinidad reservoirs are deposited in this environment.
That's over millions of years, isn't it?
Yeah, and then Mike made an important point earlier, is that from the Southwest Peninsula, we drill these wells not from sea but from land. So that obviously makes it very cost effective to drill wells from the location where we are. So after the stuff is all deposited, you've got very nice, continuous, very predictable layers. However, something happened. The Caribbean plate ran into the South American plate, and we are now right in the middle of that crumpled zone. If you two cars running into each other, the noses of those cars don't look very pretty, and they're all crumbled up. And that's exactly the area in which we're operating. So Trinidad is full of faults, formations rolling over each other, fractures. It sounds bad, but for oil and gas people that's really good, because it means that you've got a lot of structures which can trap your oil. So rather than, when oil migrates through the earth to surface, rather than being spilled to surface, which often happens, in Trinidad everything is captured. So any hydrocarbons which will be flowing up into the earth's crust will be trapped in one of these faults. So that's the geological fundamentals about what we're trying to, or what we've got in Trinidad. This is a very important seismic line. So this is from south to north, right across the Southwest Peninsula. You know that the Southwest Peninsula of Trinidad is this tail, and this is effectively a seismic section, a picture of the subsurface in the southwest. And you can see these high reflective markers, so you can see that there is zones here, here, there, which are very distinct and very mappable. A seismologist can exactly paint a picture around this, or like this. This is then the interpreted section of the seismic, and in this slide I'll remove the seismic and just look at the interpretation. But that's how the subsurface looks like in the Southwest Peninsula. So you've got this big boundary fault which outcrops on Bonasse Beach, and that's where we see on surface cruise rocks filled with oil laying on the beach. So that's this main fault. And then you've got multiple potential reservoir bearing sands. You've got the upper cruise, the middle cruise, and the lower cruise. The upper cruise is these typical channel sands I talked about. So they're there and they're everywhere, but where you're going to hit them is unsure. So that's upper and middle cruise. The lower cruise is this more permanent turbidite deposition. So this is more predictable and also larger in volume. So we've got two prospects ready to drill. One in the Bonasse area, that's a Clove prospect. So that's in this is where Bonasse is, in this highly crumpled up zone, very close to the fault. And then the larger and deeper well to 4,000 foot, not 5,000 foot. So we believe that similar structures we'll also see in Goudron. To 4,000 foot, penetrating the upper, middle, and lower cruise. So that's the key things I want to say on this slide. Then we talked about oil migration a while back. So we believe that oil has been moving up from the north into this structure and through the faults have been filling up all of this block effectively with oil. So there is a very strong oil source. There is multiple sand bodies in this area, and there's multiple faults which will make sure that the oil will have been trapped in those sands while migrating through the earth. So in this picture you see the Saffron well, which is our main prospect, which has got a target in the upper cruise, it's got a target in the middle cruise, and the largest target in the lower cruise. The Clove has got, in the reported reserves, we only report the middle cruise volumes, but there's also opportunity shallow in. If you look at the geological risking of this, is that the presence of a trap, there's an 80% chance there's a trap there. If you just look at the number of faults, the chances that there is something which holds back the oil is significant. We believe it's effective because these faults are developed in the shale environment, so they will seal. Clay is tough stuff, so that will hold back the oil. And then the reservoir presence, we know there's reservoirs there because the Bonasse field has reservoirs, and we can see very distinct pictures on seismic, effectively predicting where the reservoirs are. So if you then run through all the elements of what is important in a POS calculation, you end up with this well has got a 45% chance of being a geological success. So in exploration terms, that's as high as you're going to get. This well will find oil, will find sand. It's just a matter of how large and how well connected it is.
And those numbers are not our numbers, are they? EPIs?
These are numbers, and I'll show you in the slide later. These are numbers which are done, I'm even getting excited, my voice is...
Just on that lower cruise, what do you think, how thick is that going to be?
I've got a slide to show you. Before we go to that slide, is that before the Second World War, in 1936, U-boat drilled a well down dip of where we're planning to drill a well. And they found oil in this structure. So although we call this an exploration well, strictly speaking, we are appraising this lower structure. Yeah.
What are the drill times for this? Once you get going, how long do you think it takes to...
This well will take 2 to 3 weeks to drill.
Okay.
And we'll start in September, so...
What, start of September?
Yeah. End of September, yeah.
Okay.
October we'll know something. But now is the time to buy.
You lend me some money and I'll buy some.
Can I ask the level of 5,000 feet you mentioned, is that common then across the whole of...
No, this is very specific to Goudron.
Ah, right. And what's the reason for it?
It's in a historic...
no practical reason?
No practical reason, is other than that the Goudron field was discovered. The company who was operating in the days when they were rehashing the licenses didn't want to commit to drilling a deeper well, so they found another company who did, and then said, well, okay, we'll make a break in that stratigraphy where you, operator A, continue to operate the Goudron field, and then you, operator B, can drill deeper. So
it's purely you can drill as deep as you want.
So what we can do is if we do our technical work and really want to drill deeper in Goudron, I'm convinced we can have a conversation with the operator who has the deep rights, because that's range, to do a deal, and that we've got access to the full column. Yeah. So that's Goudron. This is excellent opportunity. So if you look at the topographical map from the top down, this is the main boundary fault you saw on the cross section. Blue is where and the picture shows the top of the formation, the top of the lower cruise formation. You can see that the lower cruise formation is dipping into the southerly direction. Here's the U-boat 1 well, which has oil in it, in the lower cruise. And if you look at the structure, we're very conservative on our volume estimate. So this is what we call the P90 estimate, and this is where we have got the line of the P10 estimate. So what those line means is that in our P10 estimates, volume reserve estimates, we believe that there's water to the north of this line and oil to the south of this line. And why do I believe we're conservative? Because we've seen oil in the U-Boat 1. So we're being very pragmatic and we're not trying to overcook this as a big hyped opportunity. So this is robust technical engineering. So this is the summary of the prospect. Talked about this, the 0.45, which is the best exploration you can get. The P50 oil in place is 53 million barrels and the P mean is 66 million barrels. And that would equate to approximately 10 million barrels of reserves. And for a company our size, that is a game changer. We changed the business from rats and mice to a real operating company.
And that's just the first opportunity.
And this is only looking at the lower cruise. This is not taking the volumes, potential volumes in the middle and upper cruise into
And you do two wells, the first one in September, when would the other one be drilled?
Well, so that's a very good question. So the question is, we've got two prospects, and how are we going to plan the drilling sequence? The logic, because I'll show you a picture of the rig later. The rig is a very robust rig. It's a Rolls Royce, but it's not been operating for a year. So
this is steel drum one that you.
That's the Talon rig, yes. So the rig has been sitting in the yard for a year. And any piece of mechanical equipment, before you get it back up and running the way it should be, it needs a shakedown. So one of the options we're considering is to use the smaller prospect, the Clove prospect, to do the shakedown, and to then go to the Saffron well as the main target, as the main exploration opportunity. We may become impatient and create comfort that the Talon rig is up to scratch, and we immediately go for the big deep one in September, and then leave the Clove well for a later infill drilling campaign. So that's an opinion we're forming. I'm leaning towards drilling the big opportunity first. My engineering team is saying, well, we want to be sure that we get to depth on the Saffron well. And let's first do a rundown, a shakedown on the Clove. But that's jury's still out.
Is it worth mentioning who EPI are and what they do?
Yeah.
So the first well, am I correct in thinking it's going to be 500,000, and then the second well will be 2 to 4 million? Is that correct?
No. The deep well we estimate around 800,000.
Really, that's come down a lot then.
Yeah. Because we know where we're drilling now too. And then the Clove well, somewhere between 400 and maybe 500,000. So and that's the benefit of being able to drill from land. Offshore, you would be drilling similar prospects, but then you're talking in the millions.
And what depth is that second well going down to, did you say, sorry?
This one, you mean? They'll go to 2,200 feet. So this is the Clove Bonasse infill well. Right, so who is EPI? EPI is an independent consultant, so it's not our internal in-house dream who are believing their own squiggly lines. So we've done the interpretation, and collectively with EPI we've come to a mutual conclusion of what the volumes are in this block and what the risks are in this block. And I've talked about all the great opportunities. 10 million barrels is transformational for our company, but if I were you, I'd be asking, but what's the risk around this? So what can go wrong? And I believe there's two main risks. One is you saw the crumpled up nature of the geology. So there's a lot of faults, there's a lot of fractures. So how continuous is this lower cruise? Is it indeed one reservoir as it looks on seismic, or is it broken up in all small parts, and do we need a lot of wells to drill it and to get it to producing? That's one risk. And the other risk is, because it's crumpled up zone, there's a lot of instability in the formations above the reservoirs, which we need to drill through. So will the overburden be sufficiently stable for us to quickly and efficiently drill to the target? So those are the two key risks I see and which we're going to be working on in the detailed design, and we've got some ideas on how to manage those risks.
And what's different from this, from any other exploration campaign I've ever been involved in, is one of the risks is normally is there oil there? Well, that is not a risk. There is oil there. We know it's there. It's a question of
Could I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So the last time that a drill got stuck, you know, the company nearly went under.
Yeah.
So what contingency is there in place for that should it happen again?
So very, very. I like that question. So to repeat it for the camera is the last big well LGO drilled. They got stuck and they lost a lot of money and nearly went bankrupt. So there's three elements to that. So one is they got stuck. They spent a lot of money on the well and they could not get it to production. So the loss of not having a producing well is often killing for a company because you do spend the money but you don't get the financial return. So that's one element. Second element was that they used a very expensive piece of equipment that cost them 2 million. So they had an outstanding liability immediately of 2 million. So not only losing the income, they also had this liability. And then third is that oil prices cratered. So the whole industry collapsed. And then, well, that was a perfect storm for the company, and then you know where it happened, and now we're here, fortunately. Yeah. So how we're managing that? First of all, we're not using expensive bits of kit. We're using gum steel to drill to TD. We've purposely designed this well such that's a vertical well, straight down to keep it as simple as possible. We've moved the service location to a point where we can just drill down, quick, easy, with a Rolls-Royce rig. We've got a Rolls-Royce Black & Decker with a top drive, and that's not usually available in Trinidad. So it is a nice piece of equipment which we'll be using to drill that well. And we're treating this as an exploration well, so we don't expect to get revenues from this well, which is financially a very strong, how do you call it, safety barrier. So even if this well is not a success, the company won't go under.
And you'll be there when it's drilling.
Oh yeah, yes. And this is probably 3 weeks, and the critical phase is 2 weeks. So during that 2 weeks, I'll be in Trinidad on the rig.
With your hard hat.
Yeah.
And Leo, just repeat how many opportunities that you're talking about. One, how many opportunities are there?
So we've matured 2 now. So this is the big one, and we've got the Clove, which is the smaller one, which is also ready for drilling, and there's at least 12. So and what usually happens is that if you've got one success, so if this comes in as a success, then the geoscientists become more confident about their interpretations, and they'll find more. So this could be just the domino.
Leo, is this Clove well, is that saying a 66 chance of success %?
Yes.
And the broker rating for VSA is based on 10%? Is that right?
Ooh, Ollie, where are you?
Yeah, that's the 10% is the standard industry when you haven't done any previous research. So this is based on the actual external consultants.
Are we expecting the rating to be updated?
Yeah, we're going through that motion now with VSA to see how and when we're going to come up with some new research on our company.
Yeah, I mean,
we believe the best thing to do is to take this information into account.
Clearly, this is sensitive information, but it's going to be in the public domain now.
This is in public domain.
If I was a serious oil developer
Yeah.
looking for opportunities, it's there.
Yeah.
So clearly this affecting the capital position of the company.
Yeah.
I think everybody in this room appreciates that it's undervalued.
Yeah.
Seeing this now puts credence to the SWP
We get
in
phone
a big
calls.
way.
And it's not
We
it's
get
not
phone
us.
calls.
It's a third party who's put us the name and reputation on this.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of hard work. So now you understand why we've been slow in getting there, maybe. But you want to do this right. You only have one opportunity. You don't have multiple starts. Clove, as I think we talked about it enough. It's not as big. oil in place is 2 million barrels, but because it's an existing infrastructure, it's in the Bonasse field. So you drill a well, it's shallow, you put a pump in it, you start producing it. So the economics of this well is robust. Same applies for Saffron, by the way, because it's right in the middle of the field. We can use the existing infrastructure. So our Black & Decker. So I really like this rig. It's got a nice top drive. It's got 2 pumps. It's got a lot of hydraulic horsepower. The only downside is not been used for the last year. I think Touchstone was the last company to drill a well with it, but it did fine then. So the next 2 months we'll be making sure we've got the right team operating the rig. So drillers are absolutely critical in getting a technical success. So we'll be looking for the best people to man this rig. And the owner of this rig is a very close friend of ours. So we can strike an equitable deal where that is based on success. So that really helps to reduce our well costs. As you know, this rig is owned by Talon, and Talon used to be part of Steel Drum, and part of our deal, Steel Drum negotiation. We negotiated a very favorable rate for using this rig. So we're in a good place. This is a picture of where the well is going to be drilled. So you can see here, that's where the Bonasse field is. So there's Bonasse 8, 2, here's Bonasse 3, and then the Saffron surface location is right in between Bonasse 3 and Bonasse 2. So you can see that it's within existing infrastructure. All we need to do is build. That's what we're going to be doing in the next 2 months. We're going to be building a road from this main road to the Saffron location, build the location, and then that's very important to recognize that if this well indeed hit the reserves we believe it will, we put a completion in and we can flow it right into the Bonasse facilities and start selling the crude. So we've got existing contracts, we've got existing PPLs, the private petroleum license in place, so we're ready to go. It's a package. Again, this PPL, it is just one line on a slide, but that's been a 1.5 years work and very, very hard negotiations with Bolt. So this is all part of the Bolt transaction and all the announcements we've made around that.
Permitting?
Yeah, so the permit, the COC permit, so we've got the environmental permit, so we can use this location. So that's another big tick in the box. We know, so now it's just getting all the work done, so doing all the engineering work, all the technical work. I want to put the slide out because this is all the technical information, so I'm not expecting you to read this, but for the techies, they can really go into this data and see that we've been very, very modest. Stuart, maybe you want to comment on the oil saturations? Is that this is...
I think we're pessimistic.
Yeah.
We're pessimistic. We've got better saturations in some ways. This is the same formation as the GY 670 well, which was the very successful well in Goudron, which actually also delivered from the lower cruise and actually had a lower water saturation than the P50 number there of 47.5. It was below 40%. So I think some of these numbers are actually quite pessimistic.
Yeah.
So water saturation drives the oil in place, because what's not water is oil. So I think these are pessimistic numbers on the water saturation. We have some reference points to use. So
This has come from the EPI report. That's not our numbers.
He calls it pessimistic, I call it conservative. I do want to show you this slide because any proper oil company not only drills an exploration well in the hope that they're going to be finding oil, but also understands what, if you find oil there, how do the economics look like. So on just this prospect, we believe that this will add close to 80 million MPV to the company's cash box.
Yeah.
This is just the lower cruise. So we haven't taken into account any of the upside in the upper and middle cruise. And we've been very heavy on capex. So if the well comes in the way we hope it comes in, then we've got an extensive program which will be funded by the crude produced from this field, and we'll be putting in a main pipeline system and export system. But if you look at the cumulative cash, this turns to positive cash flow very quickly, and that's why when you're asked about how are you going to do future raises, further raises, that's going to be very much dependent on the discovery you make, and then how this first piece of how we manage this first piece of the investment cycle. You can argue that we can be either two decisions. We can either be patient, allow the well to produce a bit, and then turn it in cash and use that cash to then drill the next few wells. Or we can have a conversation to say, well, now's the time to put some extra money in and get this peak production earlier so that everyone can go home and be a winner. So, but that's a discussion for later on.
I think the key thing here is that upon any success, we can hit the ground running in terms of moving the project forward. One other thing is we're not obligated to sell this oil to anybody. We can choose who to sell it to. I can assure you there's people out there who would love this kind of oil. We would receive US dollars for it.
It's paid in dollars.
It's paid in US dollars, and we can export the money quite easily. So there's a chain of things which makes this, the economics of this just blows anything else we've got out the water, just because we can. You saw the percentages. We won't pay any.
Sorry, what is the time scale? I can't see from here. What's that?
So this is, here's 2019, and this is, so the peak is at 2025, and then it continues to produce.
It's a line a year, isn't it?
Yeah. You fact, you would start immediately. We were drilling wells in 2020 straight away. If you had a success in 19.
Immediately turn to cash flow.
Yeah, and then it's just a question of how fast you drill the wells and how you move the project
farm
forward.
out, so we'll do it all.
That's a question we've got later on with Cloudman. If this is the discovery you hope it is, then I would want to keep most of the acreage ourselves, only for possibly the higher risk, the higher reward. One of the opportunities is a 400 million barrel oil in place opportunity, but it's got a pause of 20 to 25%. Do we want to take all of that risk, or do we want to share some of the pie and ask someone else to drill the well for us? And that's again a conversation for later. There are people looking. I've been having meetings this week, and they really like this story, and larger companies suddenly are increasingly interested.
Just to finalise on that, there's the as well as the oil sales. We mentioned SPT. SPT, we won't be hit with SPT because your capital programme. So you push that out. Historical tax losses that the companies spent. So you actually look at the economics. The returns are fantastic.
And this is a very, very heavy capex program. So we've been very conservative on the reserves estimate, and also very on the capex program. I think this is a 100 million capex program.
Yeah, and there's pipelines and facilities.
So we've been not holding back in trying to make it look pretty. This is very robust economics. Mm-hmm. And that's what you get from exploration and exploration success. Any further questions before we go into mergers and acquisitions?
Well, just on the general question of the politics in Trinidad, is it stable? And if all this oil starts gushing out, is it likely to cause problems with the population?
The good thing is that there'll be a lot of activity, and we'll be providing a lot of employment in an area which is relatively poor in the country. So that tail, we've got contracts with landowners. So our philosophy will be to use as much local resource, and to that 100 million we talked about capex spend, as much of that I want to be using local resources to make sure that you keep the population happy and on your side. I'm sure we'll do a good job.
Doesn't fully answer the question, but okay.
I can talk a bit more. There's not the relationships are much simpler. So it is with the landowners rather than with government, and we don't have a heritage government relationship. So I think, and I expect this whole development to be easier and simpler in terms of permitting and stability than it is to operate on Goudron, for instance.
Trinidad also wants the oil. Trinidad as a country wants the oil. Its oil production has been reducing over the last 20 years, so it's looking to replace it, and this provides an opportunity. And where we sell the oil, we'll pick our place, and whether we sell it internally or we sell it into the international market, will come down to commercial.
And does the government look after the population?
Pretty much so.
They do their best. Stuart, do you want to?
You've lived there.
So Stuart has lived in Trinidad for 2 years, so he's probably the best.
I mean, there are elections next year, so it's a democratic entity, and there is a serious opposition party. So that whether the government looks after the population will be put to the test seriously next year. But both parties, both serious contenders, are very supportive of the oil and gas industry. I think the difference has been the recent successes have been offshore. So if we have a success onshore, then that will be, will hit some headlines. But there are other people drilling onshore. Truckstone are drilling onshore, even Shell are going to be drilling onshore. And another local company, LOL, are drilling onshore. And I'm wishing every one of those successes. It'll be a fantastic achievement. And the potential investment will help to stabilise the economy, which did take a hit after the 2015 crash. So I think it would be seen positively, and what you have to remember is that Trinidad has been producing oil since 1910, 1911. The onshore oil industry is nothing new to people. So rigs hitting the streets and actually creating disruption is nothing new to people there. So I don't think a discovery that could end up delivering thousands of barrels a day, it's not going to create too many eruptions in an area that's already producing oil. The Southwest Peninsula has a facility in the Point 14 tank, and it has had a history of having production in that area, so I don't think the disruption will be unwelcome at all if we have a discovery.
Thank you, that's clear.
And another comment is that I'm quite impressed with the present government. They were not scared to grasp the nettle. Petrotrin was an inherently unprofitable state-owned oil company, and they were brave enough to break it apart. So to have a conversation with unions and to understand that any company needs to be based on business fundamentals, and they did a difficult thing. They stopped it. They broke it up in pieces, and they're now rebuilding their E&P industry and country.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mergers and acquisitions. I spilled the beans. We're in depth PSC negotiations. It's ours to lose. It's material. It is right in the middle of a sweet spot. It is land-based, it is in a jungle, swamp type environment, and we can use our expertise and learnings from Trinidad and export it to this region. So this is the next big prize, we believe, for our company.
And just in the last month, to give you the context, in the last month we've had, Leo's been in country in conversation with senior management. Tony's been there doing commercial legal discussions in a separate visit. Stuart's been in country discussing with contractors, operators. They hit the ground running. So when we, so
is it a
we've been.
Field?
Sorry.
Is it a current field or is it?
It is a block and next to an existing producing field. So it is an existing hydrocarbon province.
Is this the same? So when you did one of the presentations after the end of December 18 quarter, you were quite excited about an acquisition. Nothing seemed to materialise, and then again after the Q1 19, presentation, nothing's in it. Is this the
This
same?
is it. This is the one.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been a long process. We put in an offer, and then that triggered an official open bid round. So then there was a 3-month period, 90-day period where other companies were allowed to offer on this block. We came out as the winning bid, and now we are tying down the commercial terms and getting it through the various boards and through Parliament. But that's an important point. It is not something we buy from someone else. It is a ground level. So there's not someone else taking value from this opportunity. We'll be the operator, and it is under our PSC. So we're in control.
Is there any feedback from the other 4 countries where you showed an interest as well? Is there anything to come potentially?
We made several bids, several offers. We lost two, I think, three. But that's good, because that means that we're not greedy and we're not over offering. And then if you look at what happened subsequently, then the people who did offer more got into trouble. So we're not overbidding. So we're being careful and prudent. Tony is being careful.
And what's the return on investment if it goes ahead?
We use all, so this then becomes part of the larger portfolio, and all the projects need to stand up to certain capital constraints. And with a DPI of at least 0.3, we want 20% IRRs as a minimum, depending on the risk levels. So that we've got a series of internal economic hurdles which any project has to pass before we execute on it. Question answers. I think you've cast enough. Anything you would want further clarification on, please?
We're nearly at the end of Q2.
Yeah.
What do you think the daily production will be?
Very good point. Thank you for raising that. We are getting feedback from shareholders that the way we communicate with the market is not the best way, and we should see if we can try and change the way we communicate. Because the very predictable quarterly updates gives shorters, punters a lot of opportunity to play with our stock, and all the wrong behaviors are as a result being very visible on the way your share price moves during those releases. So we now want to pursue a strategy where we, how do you want to phrase this, Tony? Where we only on material news which is interesting for the shareholders and which will have or may have an effect on the share price, we will announce. So rather than having one announcement every quarter, there's going to be a series of announcements now leading up to the exploration campaign. There is a series of announcements on the acquisition, on share dealings of directors. That is so rather than going to what you say quarterly updates, that's our communication strategy. On Q2, the net income, I look at net income, I don't look at production, it is more or less the same as Q1. So with the new rigs coming in, and with the new activity, I expect it to go up.
Last October, when I met you and I asked you about the key personnel sort of issues you were having at the time, has that improved from that moment, at that time where you were losing some of the people abroad, or there was a few issues across the licenses, but you said you were addressing those?
We were choosing to work with different people, so it was our choice. So we restructured the organization, we made a few people redundant, and we added a few staff which were more aligned with, who were individuals more aligned with our values. And that's working very well now. Mike, his specialty is everything to do about behaviors within organizations. So Mike is helping us to make sure that the organization is operating it the best possible way, at the lowest possible cost. And that's where we'll always have conversations on logic versus emotion, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. All What about the emotion?
How's the steel drum acquisition bedded in, and is it performing as you wanted?
It is a complete part of the organisation now. I would like to think it's one organisation, and we treat it as one organisation, and it gives us benefits. So we now have access to the nice Rolls-Royce Black & Decker. Through Jeffrey, we've got entry into Trinidad leadership, which we hadn't in the past. We have got someone who really understands the Trinidadian culture. Plus, we've got strong operational support, now centralized out of London, with Stuart being in London. But then that allows then Stuart to also look at other countries rather than just Trinidad. So we've changed the structures, and it's working.
There's lots of disappointment with the Spanish outcome. There was a small paragraph in the report, I think, about the possibility of CPS taking a claim against the Spanish authorities. I was wondering if there's any updates on that, or are we flogging a dead horse? Because the people who tend to win these things are the legal people.
So we will submit a claim to the government on the basis that they told us that they were going to re-tender the field. We incurred costs while we were waiting for them to re-tender the field, and they did not re-tender the field. So we're saying that that's their decision, so they should reimburse us for those interim period costs that we've had. I'm conscious that the chance of success of those legal claims are always small, so we've engaged some lawyers on a contingency basis. Right. So they will receive a small amount of money as a upfront payment, but they'll be incentivised for a success rather than lawyers running away with the money no matter who wins and who loses. So we're very conscious of that. We've kept the cash spend on that. That claim will go in the next month or two. It will take time to go through the system. It needs to, like the UK, it'll go through an administrative appeal firstly, and then if that administrative appeal does not work, then we would have the right to appeal to a court. So it will take time, but we will make the claim.
Are you in a position to quantify the claim?
How much it will be for? We can do that once we've made the official claim. We can put that information out there.
It's not a small amount.
It's not a small amount.
It's worth asking.
Yeah. So that's it's good to get some money out of Spain.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing, and the other thing is we are shipping some of the Spain equipment to Trinidad to help us with our activities and tool up and kit up our own rigs. So it's not all lost.
Okay. When the steel drum deal was announced, you made reference to low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
That would be some easy wins.
Yeah.
We're about a year in now. Are you able to give an example of what that low-hanging fruit turned out to be?
So the obvious one is the Trinity Inniss CO2 injection, so which we're starting in September. So that's a very attractive project, trying a new technology in the mature field. So that's a plus. On the counter is that we also had the snowcap Corrimaruga opportunity in there. We thought that was a new field. We weren't sure, so in the commercial terms we had already carved out. So if we bring this to a development, then we'll pay Steel Drum some extra shares. We've done our tests and appraisals, and we now understand the pressure regime in that snowcap Corrimaruga environment, and we believe it's connected to reservoirs next door. So the original pressure has dropped, and as a result it immediately turns into a Goudron, which may be something we want to pursue in the future, but I'd rather spend more money in the Southwest Peninsula. So that's balanced answer to your question.
How long would you and the other directors continue taking 50% of your salary in shares at 5.1? Is there any sort of timescales to that at all?
We're actively debate. There's no intention to change. It's up to the individuals. So everyone makes the decision. I'll be continue to taking 50% of my wages in shares. Probably the same level as the last raise, but that's something we still need to work through with the remuneration committee. But I also want to be buying shares in the market, because I believe our present share price is significantly undervalued, and I want to have the opportunity to, and the Nomad just walked out of the room.
Are you in a closed period then? Are you in a closed period right now then?
We are.
Yeah, we are.
So before this, we are, and until the new acquisition is completed, then it's still closed, but then we're open. So then,
So you can
before
go buy
drilling
20
in,
million more.
I'll be buying.
Because that always helps when you get an RS and
yeah,
director of dealings.
yeah.
Another question.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the unrest in Venezuela. I saw some media reports, not that I always believe media, but they were saying that there were some troubles that were spilling over from Venezuela into TNT in southwest area there, with fishermen being abducted and all sorts of ransoms and things and things. Has there been any troubles that you know of where hardware personnel or things have been?
I'll answer first, and then I'll ask Stuart to comment as well. I believe we don't see increased instability as a result of the problems in Venezuela. It has always been an area which is just a remote location and the hardly any people living there, an element of illegal materials being transported into the country, i.e. drugs. So there is a risk, but Trinidad police is very aware. So let's see how it develops. But it's not more than what I expect it to be.
Yeah, the Southwest Peninsula is the closest point to Venezuela of the entire Trinidad Islands. But it's not, and people do cross there, and they've crossed there for years basically. We've had an active legal traffic in people coming across and buying the goods that are scarce in Venezuela for us, and that has increased even before the crisis enveloped in Venezuela this year. There are actually other points away from the Southwest Peninsula where some of the more dubious activities tend to be centred. But you do see Venezuelans around there, and I think as a whole there is a debate going on in Trinidadian society about whether to be very welcoming, and I think the response of the government has been very open, and the registration of the Venezuelans that are arriving in Trinidad is actually proceeding quite openly, so that there is a debate about how to manage it. But I think in terms of the spillage of Venezuelans into neighbouring countries, in Trinidad it's been quite small compared to the land neighbours, so it's being managed, but it has the potential obviously to develop into something different. But right now it's being managed. But interestingly, that Southwest Peninsula area, I mean, we've got an isolated field in Bonasse, and all of the infrastructure there, the electrical lines, the wellheads, they're on the beach, and they're intact.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
Let's wrap up.
Yeah. Any further questions? Rowan just walked in. Any further questions? Well, thank you very much. Thank you for open conversation, and look forward to the next quarter.
There's some lunch and we'll have a chat.
There's some, yeah. Just hang around. We'll feed you and we'll give you something to drink. Thanks very much.